Welcome to Discovering. The Michigan firearm deer season is a few days in, and hopefully many of you have gotten to spend some quality time in the woods and even maybe punch that tag. If you're a member of a deer camp, you're probably at it right now. And if you're not, you're probably wishing you were. Deer camp is more than a shack in the woods, it's a tradition. And while you might find deer camps elsewhere in the country, the UP is the capital of deer camp culture. This year, I visited a very special traditional deer camp here in the UP to talk to 95-year-old Gladys Bittner, an avid deer hunter, and two of her children, Terry and Barbara.
And I looked up, and here he's coming across that field on the run. He was on a mission. So I set my stuff down, got my gun up, and he's coming across this field, and pow, got him.
So sit back and relax. It's Monday night, and it's time for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
When was it first built?
1964.
I'm glad you came along.
12 by 16 was the very first camp. We had to build it with snow. We brought in all the material with snowmobiles. The only road was in here is a swamp, the old horse frozen roads. That was the only way in here. So till it froze, which usually back in the 80s, it got below zero and it would freeze and we could come in. So we had a Willys Jeep, 1946 Willys Jeep that we would bring in. That was the only four-wheel drive that my father owned. And we would come in with that.
You would get out here, and after riding on the swamp road, you're like the women, we'd be sitting in the back, and then mom and dad in the front, and people standing on the back of the Willys. You'd get back here and your scalp was full of rust from the roof, from bouncing up on that swamp road. It was exciting to ride out here. It was as much fun getting here as it was being out here. It was just such.
If we were coming, it was an all-day adventure.
Yes. Yeah.
When we first built, in that part, there was a bed in this corner, 2 bunks, a big bed. But as more guys started coming, we knew we had to add on and make more bunk room. Well, the guys first, they tried putting extra bunks in that little bedroom. Well, I finally took my bed from here and put it in that, so I had my little private bedroom, which was very, very nice. But so they tried putting 4 bunks in there, but they couldn't stand each other.
Over the past 60 years, they've made a lot of traditions and memories.
And then occasionally we'd have a potato pancake feed.
Make them on the griddle on the wood-fired stove.
Yeah, there's a cast iron griddle hanging there, and they would heat up the stove. And for many years, Mom did it all. Now, my brother's wife, Debbie, is our chief cook and bottle washer when it comes to them. She kind of took that over, but it heats it up in here, but it's so fun. It's just such a tradition. And then when we're all done, we have a Frisbee contest with the leftovers. We chuck them out the window like Frisbees.
Stand right in this archway here and out that window. Very many good memories. And of course, when Escanaba and the Moonlight come up, that was something else.
If you're thinking that this deer camp looks familiar, you're right. It could also be known as the Soady Deer Camp, from the 2001 film Escanaba into Moonlight. Escanaba into Moonlight is a must-watch for many hunters during deer season, much like A Christmas Story is a must-watch during the holidays. But unlike Christmas, there aren't a lot of movies made about deer camp.
It's like Christmas with guns.
Escanaba into Moonlight was written and directed by Jeff Daniels, who also stars as Reuben Soady. For those of you who have not seen it, most of this comedy film takes place the night before opening day of deer season at the Soady Deer Camp deep into Yooper Woods. This is going to be the year that Reuben Soady bags a buck, the only man in the family who hasn't shot his fair share of bucks and is deemed cursed and shamed by the entire community for being a buckless Yooper. To give the film authenticity, it needed a traditional deer camp as the backdrop for the exterior scenes.
And they needed a two-holer within 50 feet of the back door. And we have a two-holer 50 feet from the back door. So when Jeff got out of his Suburban, he looked around and he said, "This is it. There's no highway noise. There's nothing except woods, big beautiful woods."
So how did the Bittners camp come to be the most famous of all deer camps? 2 words: potato pancakes.
A friend of the family, Hal and Jill Martin, they were in Escanaba, and Hal was assistant attorney general at the time. And the executive producer for the film was Rob Brown. He knew Hal. And we had Hal and Jill out here for a potato pancake feed. And when they asked Hal, "Do you know of any camps where we could possibly make a film?" And Hal said, "There's only one camp. It's the Bittner camp."
Didn't Dad say, "Well, who's Jeff Daniels?" My father had no idea who he
Never heard of
was.
the guy. He's quite a famous actor.
He says, "What's his name? Jack Daniels?" "No, Dad, that's whiskey. This is Jeff Daniels."
The Bittners camp and property was used for all the outdoor scenes. Inside of the camp was inspiration for the interior that was built on a soundstage in Escanaba.
The place was too small to put all their big equipment in, so they had to set up in town. But all the outside they used here.
They replicated it pretty good. Did they take a lot of...
They took a lot of the paraphernalia and stuff and hung on the walls there. And
to authenticate it and such?
The building in town, they'd have removable walls. So if it was shooting south, they could take the north wall out and shoot in, and vice versa. It was pretty interesting how they do it.
It took 2.5 weeks to film the exterior scenes at their camp and property, and the family soaked it all in.
And they would work 12-hour days. They might start at noon, go to midnight. They might start at midnight, go to noon. They might start at 7 a.m., going to 7 p.m. My father and I were here every day because they needed my equipment, and my father owned the place. And Mom would come out sometimes. And other than that, we were only allowed 2 guests per day. And Jeff Daniels was owner, producer, director, actor. And he asked us, please wait till the end of the day before any questions or pictures. And then he was very gracious at the end of the day. He was a really nice guy, as well as the other 4 actors.
Remember the Wolverine hat?
Oh,
They
yeah.
had. Where did they get that hat? But it was supposed to be like kept as secure as the camera equipment. And then didn't you take it and wear it? We didn't know, you know.
Well, the camp with the cars and stuff around it, that was their makeup camp. Well, they'd be down here working. We'd be down there trying on their clothes, their costumes, and taking pictures.
We have a picture of Terry in that mink hat.
Jimmer Nagamini from Menominee, that was his hat.
On the surface, Escanaba into Moonlight is a wacky comedy about the traditions of deer camp, and most scenes are exaggerated and far-fetched. But there are relatable moments to Yoopers and anyone who has been to a deer camp.
There's a couple of things that need to be explained. First thing is, in the UP, we don't explain things.
And no one wants to be the outsider in any group, especially a buckless Yooper at deer camp. Some people love it, and others think it pokes fun at Yoopers.
A lot of people think it's ridiculous, and some parts of it are kind of ridiculous, but it was good.
It didn't really matter to me if how good the movie was. How many people can say, that they had Jeff Daniels, Harv Purnell, just a film crew out at their camp doing all of that. It was just so fun to be a part of that, period,
You almost got to be a hunter to understand some of the film, because it gets a little wild, but hunting camp does get a little wild once in
Like
a
all the
while.
superstitions.
Did you bring the pasties? Tell me you brought the pasties.
We're gonna eat like kings.
You know me. You know how I am. I am a creature with habits. If things aren't just so,
Things
things
won't
won't work
work
out.
out.
That's right.
One of the most interesting parts for me was they're going to need a full moon. And I said, well, how are you going to make a full moon? They had like a 15-foot hoop, and they stretched a big white bed sheet across this hoop. And they went out in the woods, and I went and showed them. They had screwed some screws into a big maple tree one time, and Dad scolded them for screwing into a money tree. So Sully was the foreman of the workers. He says, come on, Terry, you got to show me some non-money trees. So we went out in the woods, and I showed them beech trees. They don't have much for value. I says, you can use all these beech trees. And they shimmied up the beech trees, 2 of them, and hung this hoop. And they hit it with a couple million candle power, and you would have swore it was a full moon, looking right at you.
Evidently, they
Actually.
needed a porch in one of the scenes. I don't recall what scene it was, but they put that nice little covered porch on there. So that was a couple little bonuses out of it.
Yeah.
I look out this window and I can still see Jeff running across the field in his long underwear. Part of the movie.
Holy, wow, there he goes.
The film was shot entirely in and around Escanaba and used many locals as extras, including Gladys and her husband Amy.
And wasn't there a scene at the Swallow Inn that Dad was sitting at the bar?
Yeah.
Oh, the favorite part of the movie. Good grief. I guess when I dropped my groceries.
And I said it's funny because that's exactly how she walks and runs. Well, when she could. She had that little sachet wiggle.
Among her many talents, Gladys is a one-take wonder.
Really, I think that's all. One time, and they were very content the way it all happened, and that was it.
Gladys is not a buckless Yooper.
I pretty much got a buck every year, really.
Yeah.
And they had to be 6 point or better.
The rule was 6 point or better.
Yeah.
Starting around 90, 95, we started getting some deer, So we started making rules, tried to shoot a bigger one.
She holds the camp record for the biggest buck that she bagged back in 1995.
Mom's 8-point buck in the other room is the biggest buck ever shot out here, and she shot it at 171 yards on the run with her 30-30.
Oh, I'm sitting in my blind working on these Christmas decorations, and I looked up, and here he's coming across that field on the run. He was on a mission. So I set my stuff down, got my gun up, and he's coming across this field, and pow, got him. One shot.
One shot?
One shot.
One shot. That's all I ever did with one shot because it took me too long to get reloaded here and the bucks would be gone. So
She ended up shooting 25 bucks with 26 shots.
How about that?
Nice. Good job, Mom.
And he's trying to get one bigger.
Of course
I'm
he
trying.
is.
He's been trying how many years now?
Ever since that date, 1995. So. Going on 30 years.
Gladys started hunting around age 50. After years spent raising 8 children, it was time to go to deer camp.
Dare say hunting season was some of the best years of my life. I really enjoyed it. And the part that was super was when the hunt was done, I pretty much got a buck every year. The guys would naturally gut it for me. And I'd come into camp, and the guys were busy making dinner, supper, whatever. And when we were done, the guys did the dishes. And what would I not like about hunting? You know, really. And then, of course, the best part, after everything was done, we had a game of poker. Pretty much every night we had a game of poker game, didn't we?
And she was very lucky at that also.
I was going to say kind of a shark.
Yeah.
Gladys shot her last buck in 2009.
My blind, there's a kind of a hill on the other side of the brush and everything. And I saw on the other side of the hill, I saw this rack going through, no body with it, you know. So I got my gun all ready, and as soon as I saw enough body, I shot. And sure as shooting, I got him. And that's when my grandson heard the shot, so he come running, and so Kurt just headed into the brush to look for this, and I'm following him. Finally, I said, I think I'm going to go back, or you're going to have to haul out 2 of us here, the buck and me, because the brush was thick. But
Did he find it then?
oh, yeah.
Oh, I bet he was excited when he
what
saw
did
it.
he say when he found it? Oh, Grandma!
He's all excited. Oh, Grandma!
Such a big deer.
That was a beautiful rack. Yeah. I've sat in the blind for all of them. They built me a new blind, and there's a step ladder, not a step ladder, but steps to get up into it. You got to be up high so you can see far, you know.
I think Mom had 5 blinds over all the years, over 25 years of hunting. So of course, her name's Gladys. So it'd be G1, G2, G3, G4. And her final blind was, Mom's all Polish. So it's the Polish Ponderosa. One of the guys made a nice plaque with the Polish Ponderosas on the front of the blind.
And a Reader's Digest. Always a Reader's Digest.
And that is so cute. I always have a Reader's Digest with me. I can't just sit there for an hour and nothing. So I'd be reading and I watch, you know. And one of my son-in-laws, he comes into camp and he slams a Reader's Digest on the table. I'm getting a buck this year. Because I always had a Reader's Digest and I got a buck. So poor Dutch.
I always told her, you can't take a Reader's Digest. You have to be looking for deer. You can't be reading. And then she gets the biggest buck.
None of Gladys's 7 daughters hunt, but she's hopeful one of her granddaughters will bag a buck with her gun.
I wanted to give my gun to my daughter, Diane, but she didn't hunt, so what's the point of giving her a nice hunting gun? So I gave it to her daughter, Jennifer. She hunts.
Well, so Dad bought that gun just specifically for you?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a Centennial model, which they said down the road it's going to be worth more, worth good money, whatever. He was sorry he didn't buy 2-3 of them because it is a very nice gun.
Gladys hung her rifle and blaze orange hat up at the age of 80 when her husband passed.
My hunting days are all gone, I think. But I sure enjoyed every hunting season. That was some of the best days of my life, I would say, hunting. The crew was great, and And it was fun to shoot a buck.
Thank you, Gladys, for sharing your stories and your love for hunting and deer camp. There is no better place to be this time of year than at deer camp, sitting around the table or in front of the fire, telling stories, surrounded by family and friends. That's all for tonight, and I hope to see you right back here next week for Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.